The whole is one day. Trong hương đô sáu ra mười phương nguyện nguyện sinh nước yêu từ khổ cầu cầu xin chứng tâm thành chứng phần phần khói ghét mây lành thung thường đạo nhiệm màu đã lan truyền nơi vùng ơi nhờ chân lý chúng sanh đều thoát luân hồi đạo quy kinh vì xưa đại sai ân hóa tình kiên màu thắm tươi dài đại quang minh sáng huy hoàng trao yêu thiên sai khắp cùng quần sanh phần đạo đồng chung nhau tu tinh thân màu viên thầy. Nam mô Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật.
Lập lên hương lòng dân ta nói báo vô cùng tiếng ta chạm tài tình dạy vọng ra từ lời tâm thể tâm hoa cũng dự Nam mô Cung Dương Bồ Tát. Nam mô Cung Dương Bồ Tát. Nam mô Cung Dương Bồ Tát. Chưa vào đại đảnh tôn giáo pháp mô mật tận tiêu nhân khi chào sư thị cô ngỡ quy y nhớ tam tính lại. Nam mô thế giới mười phương thường cầu bình cứu vô thượng như Phật. Như theo ba tường độ thanh tịnh tu ra năng trừ thâm tâm bệnh vì cô đỡ quy y nhớ tam tinh đại. Nam mô thế giới mười phương thường cầu từ đâu có đường địa Đại địa chư Bồ Tát thanh tịnh tứ sa môn năm cứu nhân gian khổ thì cô ngỡ quy y nhớ tam tính đại. Nam mô thế giới mười phương thượng cầu cứu vô lượng thánh lợi.
Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to pass meditation. Only because I might give you some basic guidance how to meditate. Now, everybody with my mindfulness. Use your hands massage the face, the neck, the back, leg, arm. Be comfortable and ready for meditation. In Buddhism, there are many methods we can use to meditate in order to achieve a state of positive mind. The most effective and common method we use is following your breath. In this method, you need to choose the touching point of your breath. You use the area around the neck or the heart. When you breathe in, mindfully acknowledge your breath pass by touching point. When you breathe out, mindfully acknowledge your breath pass by touching point. The most important advice, you need to follow your breath continuously in order to avoid the arising of stream thoughts in your mind. However, if you distract from outside or unqualified arising in your mind, don't return to the main object of meditation with the breath and touching point. Maybe a second now, that you end the meditation. Once again, with your mindfulness, use your hands on top of the face and back to the back and on the back and be comfortable and before. I always remind myself for now when I go home, I practice meditation every day. Early in the morning, late night, long short sessions became the however, if you do it faithfully every day, within time, you will achieve a state of great wisdom will develop and happiness will follow. Thank you. Phật. Nam mô Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Hare
Reciting the Mahakamanya Paramita Heart Sutra, we dedicate its merits to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting true treasures, for the peace of the world, the peace of this temple, the strength and sound practice of its members, for the restoration and health of the natural world, as well as plants and creatures, and to all efforts in its service with gratitude. May this good karma be extended to all relations, and may we realize the good way together.
What should be done by one who skillfully lives and who knows the path of peace. Let him be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and rule in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing, but otherwise wishing in gladness and safety. May all beings be at peace. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, only not. The great or mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living here and in the spirit. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life, with charm upon charm, so with the longest heart, she will not cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths, outward and inward, free from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the supply of life, by not holding to its views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being free from all the sense desires, is not more again than the world of spirit. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, or spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion.
Take the sweet nectar.
Buddha Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Being one with the Buddha in the 10 directions, being one with the Dhamma in the 10 directions, being one with the Sangha in the 10 directions, being one with all the formless control space and time, being one with our original teacher Sakyamuni Buddha, being one with the great Manjusuri Bodhisattva, being one with the Samatha Bodhisattva, being one with the great compassion and Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, being one with the Mahaprajna Paramita, being one with the unconditioned Tathagata, being one with the boundless Tathagata, please nourish and sustain us, being one with the inconceivable body Tathagata, Regular of Dhamma, sing for being one with all Buddhas, discerning the water will of compassion. Namo Avalokiteshvara, Namo Avalokiteshvara, Namo Avalokiteshvara.
Supplication for the raising of the voting mind. God feed the hungry spirits.
Raising the body, mind, the something else is offered to all the hungry spirits throughout space and time, building the smallest particle to the largest space. Your hungry spirits in the 10 directions, please gather here, sharing your distress. I offer you this food of me, it will raise up your thirst and hunger.
Prayer, food sharing.
I pray that all who receive this offering will return its merits to all Buddhas and to all creations throughout space and time. In this way, they will be thoroughly satisfied.
Prayer for raising the voting mind.
I further pray that in receiving this meal, all your suffering will be eradicated, and that you will be liberated, so that we joyously recall
all our spirits and with all our might. By misery and suffering no longer, we vow to accomplish the way. May all creations of the dark world swiftly accomplish the good way to death.
All who pass through our space and time, all glory, cho tất cả hương linh đất độ cao siêu kỳ giáo xuyên hàm trên lời lạc phổ huyền âm siêu dương hỡi ba giới đúng năm tình dự vô tình
Nam Nam Well, good morning. Are you ready? Ready for what? Ready for stretching exercise. Who volunteered today? Are you volunteer? No, then maybe volunteer. Okay. I need to learn your name again now.
Danielle.
Daniel, okay. It's not a happy to be again. I went. That's nice, right? Well, good morning and your who the first time comers? Please raise your hand. I would like to introduce you. one two three four. So please share with the name where I'm from, and we like to come forward from my group.
Good morning, I'm Susan. I'm from Nashville, and I'm
Okay, you welcome here. You welcome. Okay, welcome
Charles Porter, and I'm visiting from and there was a release and so you all out San Francisco.
Okay, welcome here. I'm hoping that you can actually go. Okay, I don't think anything we have. So smart. The rest of us not here, right? We need every Sunday. So we welcome you all. Happy New Year. Anyone wants to be there? We deserve it moving forward. Okay, so we will forget about what we okay, now if you know, the next section is now. Today's testimony will continue what we talked about last Sunday. And that's it, right?
Yeah.
You get sort of now talk about you face freedom. Okay, I can also use the microphone.
Thank you so much. So my wife alerted me this week to a study that was recently published, and it's getting a lot of attention now from psychologists, and it's being reported in psychology-related journals and stuff, and more generally from people who teach mindfulness and practices and meditation and so on. And this research was done by a Dutch psychologist, and her paper was called "An Exploration of Spiritual Superiority: The Paradox of Self-Enhancement." And I'll tell you what that means in a minute. But it's interesting. So without going into a lot of detail, they found that when people begin to learn meditation and other spiritual practices, that in a lot of cases, that this can become just something else that the ego attaches to. And so the purpose of spiritual practice is to really transcend our ego and to recognize that we're a part of something bigger than just this little form here, but that instead of becoming less ego-driven, that if you don't do it right, that you can end up being basically kind of self-congratulatory about it. And this study didn't surprise me at all, because I've seen this a lot. I've seen it myself. First time I went on a retreat at the Thai temple, I found myself later kind of, I went on this retreat. You know what I mean? And people do this. But to actually make spiritual and practices like mindfulness and people teaching certain kinds of meditation and stuff, a lot of times are offered in these sort of secularized formats that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, where people are learning them in order to basically feel better, instead of to do what they were really designed to do, which is a spiritual purpose. So to actually make spiritual progress means that you need to get the ego out of the way. There's a sign out there somewhere on the grounds. I can't remember now where it is. I saw it years ago, and when I saw it, it really caught my eye. It was a saying from the Venerable Kai Tian, and it says, "Your true life of happiness does not need a self to exist. And I thought, wow, that's a really profound way of putting into a few words what a lot of Buddhist teachings is about. Is that our happiness doesn't need us to identify as something. And in fact, I would take it even a little further and say that true happiness needs no self to exist, transcendence of self to exist. So when I wrapped up the talk last week, I had explained, that Gautama had become the Buddha after 6 years of intensive practice, looking for a way to escape the cycle of suffering, the cycle of coming and going back to this life. And if you're born here, you're going to experience some stress. So he's looking for a way out of that. And you might remember that last week or the previous week, I used the term soteriology, which is a kind of fancy word that comes from the religious studies, and it refers to a religion's doctrine of salvation. What does it mean to be saved? What are we being saved from? How do you get saved? That's the term that's used in the Christian sense often. But every religion has this in one form or another. Basically, what is the objective of the religion? And so in Buddhism, we don't talk about being saved, we talk about going for refuge. So basically, we're entering a path to true spiritual long-term safety. So as Buddhism expanded from India to other cultures, and it evolved, that the objective kind of changed a little bit. So we end up with multiple options, sort of multiple processes of transcendence, which is great because it doesn't mean you're stuck with just one thing. But it gets a little confusing if you don't know that going in. And so the Buddha's original teachings, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, which is what everybody reads about when you first approach Buddhism, that was intended to becoming an arhat, one who is completely freed from all attachments, all fetters that bring you back to existence and to suffering. There's a discourse in the Pali Canon where a monk asks, how do I transcend suffering? And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll read the kind of the center part of it. He says to the Buddha, to one who is seen to the far shore, in other words, the safe place, I come with this question. How does one view the world so as to not be seen by death's king? In other words, how do I see reality so as to escape from this cycle of dying and being reborn? And the Buddha replied, view the world as empty, always mindful to have removed any view about self. View the world as empty, always mindful to have removed any view about self. So as soon as you start evaluating the world relative to this, to self, you're getting in the way of your true happiness. So this is the bottom line. See everything as empty of self. And there's different ways of doing that. That's not as easy as just going, oh, okay, well, I'll do that then. I wish it was that easy. But I'll go home, be enlightened. But there's been a lot of dialogue over the years about how to go about doing this. And so I'm going to talk about one of them today, and I'll talk about others later in the month. But this is probably actually the route to liberation that's practiced by most of the world's Buddhists. And most of the people in Buddhist countries probably do this. But it's probably the least understood and appreciated by Western Buddhists. So I have dual ordination. I'm a Soto Zen monk, but before that, I was ordained in a non-sectarian Buddhist organization, which has its roots in two different schools of Japanese Buddhism, Rinzai Zen and Jodo Shinshu. So Jodo Shinshu, which you can refer to as Shin in short, means true Pure Land. And it puts a lot of emphasis on faith as practice. So the true in Jodo Shinshu, by the way, doesn't mean that it's the best or the one real Pure Land practice. It means the Pure Land comes about through true and trusting, from sincere faith. The core teachings of it come from a set of scriptures known as the Pure Land Sutras, which involve this mythical entity named Dharmakara. So this is a person who existed in a reality before this reality. You know, you think about the Big Bang, right? If you look at the universe from the sort of contemporary astrophysics version, the universe expands, and then after many, many, many thousands of years, it contracts again, and then it starts all over, right? So you could see that as being this infinite process. There have been worlds that have been coming and going since beginningless time and will continue going until endless time. And so this happened in an era before this world existed, that there was a king named Dharmakara. And this king heard a talk by a Buddha from that time, that realm, named Lokasvara Raja, which means, Raja means king. So he was a Buddha king. After he hears Lokasvara speak, Dharmakara is awakened. And he's so moved by gratitude and by love for this teacher that has shown him the way out of suffering, that he spontaneously bows to him repeatedly and begins to praise him. And I'm going to read you sections of this. This comes from the larger Pure Land Sutra, and it is gorgeous. I'd read the whole thing, but it's kind of long. But I'll read the important parts. It's the basis of Pure Land Buddhism. So you'll hear people saying Aditaphat all the time here, and you probably learn to say it yourself. And this is why this comes from this particular sutra. As the morning sun lights the mountain peaks, so does your face shine. Such awesome brightness and nobility is without equal, beyond compare. The sun, the moon, and the brightest gems, though shining with dazzling brightness, are completely dimmed and obscured as if they were a pile of ink sticks. In other words, the enlightenment that he's seen as a result of hearing from this Buddha is so bright that everything else is dark by comparison. It says the countenance of the Tathagata, the face of the Buddha, is beyond compare in the whole world. The great voice of the enlightened one resounds throughout the 10 directions. His morality, learning, endeavor, absorption and meditation, wisdom, and magnificent virtues have no equal. They are wonderful and unsurpassed. So he's seeing what, to the heart of Buddhahood, that it's about practicing these virtues that I've talked about last time until they're perfected. And so after praising the teacher in this way, Dharmakara makes a vow that he will also become a Buddha. And that when he becomes a Buddha, he's going to create a heavenly paradise that will welcome all sincere believers. He's going to become a Buddha by perfecting those virtues. He says, I resolve to become a Buddha equal in attainment to you, to save living beings from birth and death and lead them to liberation. So he's making this vow that he's going to do everything he can to become a Buddha so he can save everyone. It says, my discipline in giving, moral virtue, patience, effort, and meditation and wisdom will be supreme and unsurpassed. Those are the virtues you have to develop to become a Buddha. He vows that when I become a Buddha, I shall carry out this promise everywhere. To all fear-ridden beings shall I give great peace. When I become a Buddha, my land shall be most exquisite and its people wonderful and unexcelled. My seat of enlightenment will be supreme. My land, being like nirvana itself, will be beyond comparison. I take pity on living beings and resolve to save them all. Those who come from the 10 directions will find joy and serenity of heart when they reach my land. They shall dwell in peace and happiness. So this is, like I said, this is a story that appeared in the Buddhist canon several hundred years after the Buddha, after Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, had passed away. But it represents something that is a sort of a different way of awakening. in the story, he ultimately fulfills these vows. And in time, with diligent practice, he becomes Amitabha Buddha, which means the Buddha of infinite light. In Japanese, where I come from, in terms of true Pure Land, it's Amida Butsu. In Vietnamese, it's Adita Phat, Amitabha Buddha. So basically, Pure Land Buddhism recognizes that many of us, most of us, are so bound up in the fetters created by our past karma that to become an arahant is unlikely. But Amitabha, the presence of infinite light, which exists, which you can see, creates for us this heavenly realm which is already exceptionally blissful, like nirvana itself, and where enlightenment is inevitable. He says, I take pity on living beings and resolve to save them all. And when they reach my land, they shall dwell in peace and happiness. So the vow is that living beings will all be reborn there if they just entrust that this is possible. And then everyone is freed from the cycle of suffering. So what's required to enter this Pure Land is a state of mind called, that in Japanese is shinjin, which means true and trusting. In practice, we express this idea in the Japanese phrase, Namo Amida Butsu, I revere Amitabha Buddha. So you might say that if you want to work with this practice, when you say Adita Phat when you're here, or if you want to do it in Japanese, Namo Amida Butsu, do it when you greet one another, when you feel grateful during services, things like that. So bear in mind that Amitabha is not so much a being as the personification of oneness, the infinite light, the eternal infinite light that's available to us all. So when we start to practice Buddhism, we gradually awaken to the idea that ourself is not a separate and discrete thing, but part of a greater whole. And the idea of interdependence is part of this understanding. It's even a little bit more than that. You've heard me talk before probably about how the human being is more like a wave on the ocean than an object. A wave on the ocean can't exist separate from the ocean. And we're like a wave in existence, in form and formlessness, in this sort of eternal oneness. We can't be separate from it and still exist. We are part of it. We're never apart from it. So when you say Namo Adita Phat, that's really an acknowledgement of that recognition. Phat, by the way, means Buddha, and Adita means infinite light, if I understand it. It's a little bit that I understand correctly. So if you say it with true and trusting, meaning that you're letting go of the ego, you're surrendering the I am in order to acknowledge the oneness, the Tathagata, that everything is. So if you can do that, you don't have to wait for death and to be reborn in the Pure Land. The transcendence of the ego, it is rebirth in the Pure Land in that moment. But on a more sort of down-to-earth level, this is a reminder that you're never fighting the spiritual battle by yourself. Amitabha vowed to help all beings achieve liberation. And so when you greet another person with the name of Amitabha Buddha, Adita Phat, Amida Butsu, you're acknowledging that you are together in this spiritual practice, that you are together in this movement toward liberation for all beings. So when things are going smoothly, Adita Phat is a statement of gratitude. When traveling the spiritual path is difficult, Amida Phat is a recognition that help is available to us all. We still have to do what needs to be done. We still try to perfect those perfections. We still try to live in a moral life and train our minds and all of those kinds of things. But we're acknowledging and experiencing for ourselves the truth, the reality, that we don't have to do this alone. So, thank you for your attention.
Thank you. People come with that. So, we will continue on next week, right? So
Right.
I can
Yep.
review what knowledge on next. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Susan Ross, what is the name of the larger, what do you call the,
Pure Land Sutra,
Carolina Secrets? What's the name of that?
the larger Pure Land Sutra.
That's all.
Yeah, yeah. That's what, so there's the larger Pure Land Sutra, the shorter Pure Land Sutra. There's some contemplations on Amitabha. If you want to, so there's a really nice translation of it available in PDF form online. And if you email me, you have my email address, email me and I'll send you the PDF.
Oh, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Yes.
Do Buddhists believe in a creator?
Not in the way that like the Abrahamic traditions talk about a creator, sort of a master architect kind of thing. I mean, they believe in creation, but is there someone who does the creating? I'd say no, not really. And so there are eternal beings. Buddhas are eternal beings, but they didn't create things. They're a part of creation. So to think in terms of a creator would imply that there's oneness and there's someone that created oneness, and which doesn't really quite work, does it? Right? So, short answer is no. Long answer is maybe, depends on how you look at it.
No mass? Question? Comment? Yeah, comment?
There. So that's like what Spencer Morris says to us. So we do the same thing on our side, and we come to see each other, we put the hands together, and we say, I need a hug. And then now, because of the COVID, but this is the time, who's going to practice it?
Yeah.
So you can say, I need to have Buddha, I need a hug. And then other strategy, I
That's a good comment, huh?
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah,
put together with our message.
sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
So you can learn Vietnamese, or you can say English. Okay. Well, look like everybody happy. Oh, you can do it.
Thank you for all your talk.
You're welcome.
One of my teachers, I've got quite a few of them. Mr. Clark, he said, pride is one thing, but spiritual pride you got to be very careful.
Yeah. You know, and there's a lot of practices, a lot of different schools of Buddhism have recognized this and talked about it over the centuries. But, you know, we're human beings, and the ego has this remarkable ability to take pretty much anything and go, oh, that's mine. Aren't I prettier now? You know, and so, yeah.
Thank you again, Mr. Morris. So, some newcomers, next question? Something you okay. Well, I would like to update you because some members of me asked about the COVID-19 vaccine. I probably most of you follow already, right? Give you my information I got from my practice. Up to now, if they had tier 1, tier 2, you know, up to now, the 55 of the priority for vaccine. I don't know if any of you have been able to register to get online. Now, how do you,
We should do tomorrow and Tuesday, but you can't register for first month.
so that's different from this county, but Orlando and some counties, they are able to get online to get vaccine. So obviously, you do a signal to them, they find a home. But the key question, first question, they come to me now. If your county, some of you have exposure to the virus already, up to now, CDC still recommended to get that. Because up to now, talking to some of you, they don't know, they change everything. So up to now, if you exposure, you should get that. So up to now, the vaccine is safe. I can tell you, I went myself 2 weeks ago, and I see the literature about the vaccine. If you hear the news, they come out, two patients have problems, and that's the nature of everything. So up to now, so don't you fear about the vaccine. I'm telling you now, if you don't do it, you will regret it on your time. I lost my faith in all people. I'm tired of being engineering and working with them. It's like at the top. Then you see traffic in order to go there. You got some symptoms you keep going. Until we come to the ER, didn't have chance to revive. So having said that, I changed my philosophy now, for the last 9 months actually, when I go out to work, I really every morning I come wake up, I feel my forehead, fever, I pray. Go to the nursing home, go to the hospital, and take my temperature. That feeling usually until therefore I'm until weeks ago when I having said that, you guys, I recommend it and advise you guys, if you have chance to do it, get online to register. I have to make it register for next week. And I have to have name online to March. I don't know what happened, but I was told next week all the pharmacies will have you guys able to get name online. It doesn't matter now, next week, next month, but time to get it out and get it. I believe that more people will be getting that at the end. That's the reason. So, just a demonstration for
in case that sometimes you may have to take a few hundred times before you get to the point.
so when you register, you did it,
Right after you register, you will have to click the second appointment a few hundred times.
Oh, easy, right?
Yes,
I'm not able to do it online. Oh. So who able to get on to site?
Long way.
John, where you supposed to have?
We did it last week, and,
You got
yeah,
it? Oh,
let me get the shot. The appointment was the 21st of January. 3 weeks lag in trying to get your appointment on the city.
where is the
That's what, and we, let's come and see what
Well, no, I believe on the city center, nursing home, they do it all the residents, whoever willing to do it. And they do it last week in my facility. But I believe, now, on Monday, all the pharmacy around our fortnight here, they marketing, they really, check it out on the pharmacy, you call, they will give you information how to get registered for that. It takes time, but love. They come out many thousands and then they have very good. Does it work? Did you get it?
Yeah, no, so I'm not quite 65 yet.
No, but I was able to get enrolled when you still waiting.
So I have an appointment to talk about this about 2 weeks. So, but I was wondering, how long after the first shot do you get the second shot?
There are 2 vaccines going now, and they all in Florida, Pfizer and Moderna, and they all need 2 shots. Pfizer, the second shot 3 weeks later, and Moderna 4 weeks later. I can tell you now, if you probably experience some symptoms with APD or like a flu shot. However, the young people have weak immune response. They experience more symptoms. I share with you because when I got my shot, my daughter got it, my son-in-law got it, and that was sick. Oh, hey, do you have any problem? No, I just had an APD overnight. But they got sick. But the next day, that's very wonderful. They kind of simple, but that's not that. You get over it. And the good thing is, when you heard about the new train from India, the move to California now, the study has been shown that the actual effect, the vaccine will cover for resistance of the mutation strain. So, I just wanted to check. Right, if you have anything to update, exactly, I will update. But good luck to you all. So far, we did good. For last month, we did not have surgery, because we officially opened the home. I haven't heard any of it. Right? Just accident. We don't know. COVID-19, there is no unbelievable. But good luck to you all. Yeah. Yeah. But hopefully we see you all that way, healthy, you all. Okay. Let's sing happiness again. Wow. Whenever I feel happy. Aware of my I feel happy. Aware of my I feel happy. Because I have good when I walk, I feel happy. Whenever I see, I feel happy. Whenever I rise, I feel happy. Because I have good to me. Here and here and here and wow, beautiful. You listen every Sunday, but you still clap the hand. That's good. Let's sing every day, right? Okay, thank you very much. And have a good healthy day.
I just talked to people because of the COVID going on, that we don't have some of our members to cook lunch for us anymore. Today, and last night, people, we said that it was the last time for everyone. So after this, until Friday, we will let you know that we don't have serve lunch anymore, but we might have some snacks like apple or orange in the greenhouse for everyone.
Oh, that's sad, huh?
I know, but she will insist that we want to do it, however, because of her health, we won't let her do that. Yeah. So we just provide you some like some snacks, cookies in the greenhouse. But today, we still have to advise because she already cooked.
You understand the situation, right? So one of the members we all every Sunday with us, and she will cook. Now, the family is not able to come. Simple has really issue, that's why she will do it whenever we can. But I think we need to get together every Sunday, get together, had a long list of problems we don't have, and we still were able to get together. Yeah, that's right.
Cookies or apple or something we will put outside the greenhouse, because I know a lot of us came here, technically 5 minutes to an hour. So after and then I'm going to be hungry, so we can provide some snacks.
Yeah, we say that this lunch is not a big deal for us. So, right, we have, all right. So go, my name is you good. You gave us some food, let's do it, right? If you're not able to, so what, right? Not a big deal, right? So hopefully we see you next Sunday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.